want you to listen tonight, because most of us never had good fathers who sat with us and taught us the way Bishop Jakes wants you to be taught in this conference. Much of our manhood skills were taught by men who were not men.
There is not a good man in this room who is not trying to get who you love over the road, over rough road, potholes, treachery, with substandard equipment sometimes, poor education sometimes, little opportunities sometimes didn't have a father yourself and you are still trying to get them over the road. You see, when it comes to being a man, when it comes to being a father, when it comes to being a man in leadership, I'm going to tell you something, ladies, in case you don't know it. I know you talk about being a woman, it's hard, and I believe it. But let me tell you something, being a man ain't no joke.
I think Bishop Jakes knows what I'm talking about.
It ain't no joke. You might not read about it in your magazines that are written by women, to women, telling you 9 things a man needs, and it's so funny, all the stuff you read that your girlfriends tell you that we need. It's a women's magazine, it's a women's article, the woman wrote the story, she's telling you about us. Most generally, she don't know what she's talking about. You just spent $3.53 or $10.53, whatever they sell it for, I don't know. You just wasted that. You should have put that in the offering.
For example, the first thing that a male needs is sex. A need is a requirement necessary for function. In other words, a need is not a want. Your car does not want gasoline. Your body does not want water. I like what Paul says. Paul says, don't you be spiritual now, ladies. I'm going to fast and pray for 3 weeks. I'm going to just, what? The Bible says, don't you go and fast and pray unless you first ask, not God, but your husband. That's what the scriptures teach. And then the Bible says, and after you finish fasting, after he allows you to go and fast and pray, it says, hurry back to the bed. Why? Because Sister Mabel in the church will provide what he needs if you don't. While you out having missions, someone on a mission with your husband. Because he doesn't want it, he needs it. A need is not a want. Men do not want sex. They need sex. Why? Because the male is designed by God to be a progenitor. That means a male is always full of seed.
Because the truth of the matter, it is hard to be a man. We are filled with this juice called testosterone.
A man doesn't want sex. They need sex.
And I won't get into all the complications of testosterone, but it is both a blessing and a curse. It makes us highly competitive. It makes us want to win. It makes us feel driven. It makes us aggressive. And anytime we don't feel like we're winning, it is difficult for any man to continue to do what he thinks he doesn't do well.
You need to really study and research how unique we are before God.
So for all the naggers who are trying to change him by telling him what he doesn't do well, the more you tell him what he doesn't do well, the less inclined he wants to come home. Because men are not drawn to criticism. They are created in the likeness and image of God. We are drawn to praise. We perform the best when you tell us what we do well. If you brag on what we do well, we will do it better. If we come in with 2 bags of groceries and you talk about how strong we are, we'll throw that 3rd bag up and say, girl, this ain't nothing. I carry this bag on my toe. I'm just, you know, yeah. We love praise. We love praise. We love praise. We're created in likeness and image of God. When you praise God, he's magnified. He swells up when you praise him. When you praise men, we become better, we become bigger, we become larger, we become stronger, we become more adept. The truth of the matter is, there's not a man in this room that doesn't have certain things in his life that he tends to want to shy away from because he is afraid that he doesn't do them well.
As a matter of fact, the best thing that's supposed to be heard by a man when he comes home is when his wife says, Daddy's home now, everything's okay. The most beautiful thing a child should say to a father is, my daddy's home now. That's what a child needs to say, and a mother needs to say about her husband. She's supposed to be able to say, my warrior in shining armor is here. My protector has arrived. He's a guard. A real man protects.
But has society put us in a dilemma? Have they put us in a situation? Because, Emmett, they keep changing the game on what a good man is. They keep changing the game. I don't know. It's confusing. Have they set us up to fail? Because every 2 or 3 years they come out with a new mandate as to what is a good man.
Why would a man take a can of paint and go to a newly painted wall and deface it? He's angry at society.
It used to be if you were a good provider, you were a good man. You took care of your family, you paid the bills, you brought the money home, you were a good man. Didn't matter that Papa didn't talk. You might get a I love you every 20 years in a critical situation. Maybe on the deathbed confession, they might break down and say some grunt love. You couldn't tell whether it was love or gas because it was just a grunt. But it didn't matter. He was a good man. And if you said anything about him, your mama would slap you. She said, don't say nothing about him. He's a good man. Because back then, women didn't let kids disrespect the husband.
You go home to her children, you've been married for 5 years, and the kids call you by your first name. They tell you, you're not my daddy. I mean, this is frightening to some men. No authority. And you can't correct them when they curse and do foolishness. You can't even correct them. There's no authority in the house. So you feel like a slave, like a dog. That's why a lot of men don't know what to do. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel respected. They don't feel secure. Because you see, the problem is the woman don't know what she's doing to you. She needs help too, because she's destroying your masculinity.
But today, you can't just be a provider. You got to be in touch with your feelings. Listen at your inner voice. You've got to be touchable. You've got to be willing to express your emotion. And so now you're not just a provider. You don't just bring home the bacon. You got to be able to cry. But if you cry too much, you're too soft and you're wimpy. And if you don't cry at all, you're not a man. And so now most men are confused. How can I be a good man to a woman who enjoys being a good man? It's going to get rough in here today, but we deserve a day too.
Men don't feel the power of self-confidence anymore. They don't feel the power of social roles anymore. Men don't feel the power of their masculinity anymore. That's why many of them are not sure whether they are men. How many women have you met who said to you, I don't need your car, I don't need your money, I don't need your house, I don't need nothing from you, I got everything myself?
I spent all my life being groomed to open the door for you and make sure you're okay. Call you, check on you, make sure that what you calling me for? You checking up on me? I can open up the door for myself. When you pride yourself on doing what I used to do, have you not worked me out of a job? Has society set us up to fail in that now we don't know whether to buy the dishes or wash the dishes? Has society set us up to fail because you moved into the positions we used to have and we don't have a role to play, and yet we're commanded to be on the set?
You know what made my father feel valuable? When my mother told him, thank you for bringing home food. Thank you for having a roof over our heads. Thank you for providing for the kids. That made him feel valuable. But you don't hear that no more today. So you're struggling just to feel important to your wife.
Why do you need him? Why do you need him? When was the last time you told him why you needed it? What do I bring to the table? What is it about me that makes your life better? Because if all you're good at is communicating where I fall short, don't expect me to excel, because I do not flourish in criticism. I flourish in praise. I flourish in the same thing that you give your sons, because believe it or not, every father in here is somebody's little boy. Oh, it's quiet now. You see, the world is accustomed to celebrating mothers. It's sexy to celebrate mothers. Ask retail how much more money is spent on Mother's Day than Father's Day. Ask Hallmark how much more money they make off of Mother's Day cards than Father's Day cards. There's not always a big payoff for being a steady man. And the truth of the matter is, more and more men of all colors are quitting, walking away. And the younger generation is mad, angry, upset because their fathers left, never even noticing you on your third go-round. It is easier to criticize somebody for leaving than it is for you to stay. And sometimes you're blaming your parents for things that are in you too. Oh, it's quiet. I never knew my father. You left your wife. Your kids haven't seen you in 6 months to a year. You're creating the same thing that you're criticizing your father for doing. Are you not doing it back to your son again? I just thought I'd ask you about it. What is different about you walking out on your wife and your daddy leaving your... I just thought I'd bring it up. You just left another broken-hearted little boy trying to figure out who he is, trying to find a role model, a mentor anywhere he can, from a gang leader to a child molester, looking for somebody just to touch him because your hand left him untouched.
In the last chapter of Malachi, the last 3 verses, God concludes what man needs. He talks about the coming of the Messiah, and then he says what would be the focus of the mission of Jesus. And here's what he says in Malachi. He will come and he will return the hearts of the children back, not to the mothers, but to the fathers, and the fathers back to the children. Otherwise, he says, I will curse the land. Which means whenever a society is crumbling and seems like it's under a curse, God says it's because the fathers are absent.
Daughters so fascinated by men they've never been with that they sleep with anyone just to see what a man was like. Or women who marry men but have never lived with a man because she didn't have a father, doesn't understand the signals and the nature and the characteristics of a man. And it's hard to be a good man to a woman who never had a man in her life at all. Because you have to live up to what she imagined. And just because you imagined it doesn't make it doable, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it believable. I wish you would have imagined a flawed man, a broken man, a man that gets tired, a man that gets scared sometimes, a man that's worried and still fighting and swinging and pushing. I wish you had not imagined Superman for a husband. I wish you would have imagined Clark Kent, because Clark Kent might be more achievable. I have my Superman moments, but alas, I have my kryptonite too.
90% of the men in this room are angry men. You won't admit that, but I know that's true. And your anger is deeply concealed. I guarantee you that all the men in prison are angry men. All. And if you listen, I've done interviews with these men for my books. Everyone was angry. And 90% of them was angry at their father who they never met, or who they never saw, or who was never there, or who they couldn't talk to. They were angry, and their anger comes out in frustration. And the frustration comes out in self-hatred, and the self-hatred is manifested in depression. And most men are depressed, and they quietly carry their anger. David says, even though they try to destroy me as a male, I find my rest, oh my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. Are you listening to me? He alone is my rock and my salvation, and he is my fortress. I will not be shaken.
I want to talk this morning about a man who fell short. He's in Genesis 35. His name is Jacob. He comes from a good family, a very strong family. He comes from a family of do-right people. He's a do-wrong guy in a do-right family.
Inspiring.
Have you ever been a do-wrong guy in a do-right family? Not living up to the family brand, the family model, the family ideals, the family concept. Are you the stone that the builders rejected? Are you the misfit person in your family that didn't fit in with the rest of the people who always were different, stood out? He was just a different sort of guy. Truth of the matter, he didn't fit in. He comes from a long line of faith men. Abraham was his grandfather. Isaac was his father. And here comes Jacob along, and Jacob was slick, greasy. He was greasy as a bucket of KFC. There's some brothers in here right now, you got on them fatigues and everything, but you're just as greasy. You're just as greasy as McDonald's fries, sitting up there smiling, praising the Lord and raising your hands. And yet, God does call greasy people. It's hard to explain. It's crazy. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but God does call greasy, broken people. Jacob was a trickster. He was a con man. Truth of the matter, he didn't get there by himself. As my grandmother would say, his mammy was a little greasy too. But they don't talk a lot about greasy women. They only talk about greasy men, because Greasy women cannot identify greasy men even when they sometimes help to create them, and so we don't hear much about his mama. But if you're a Bible scholar and you read up on his mama, you find out that boy didn't get greasy by himself. Whether it was nurture or nature, the composite of them both had created a profile of Jacob that said, you don't fit in with the rest of the family. You're not like your grandfather Abraham. You don't have his faith. You don't have the tenacity of your father Isaac. You're a misfit. You're a trickster. You're a con man, and you're a scam. And yet God reached down and said, I want you. What do you do when a holy God snatches a greasy man and says, you're in my plan and I have a purpose for your life? I know you've been strung out on drugs. I know you've been an alcoholic. You've been a wife abuser, but I got a plan for your life, and I'm going to snatch you out of your background and set you into your destiny. That's the guy I'm talking about. His name is Jacob. Look over to anybody sitting next to you and say, what's your name? What's your name? We're doing a grease check in here. Yeah. Jacob didn't know his name. He didn't know his real name. He knew what they called him. He knew what life had made him. He knew what situations had done in his life. He has an encounter with God on Peniel, and God gives him a new name and says, you think you're greasy. You think you're slick. You think you're a trickster. He said, but you're a prince, and you don't even know it. He hops down off the mountain, having had an encounter with God that changes his life, and he enters into the twilight zone of living between two names, Jacob, which meant trickster, and Israel, which meant prince. And you'd be shocked how many men in this room are living in the twilight zone, living between their Jacob and their Israel. What is a fantastic, amazing theological conundrum for me is all of his life, whenever the Bible refers to him, it vacillates back and forth between Jacob and Israel, letting me know he never quite killed either one of them. Because the church tells you, if you pray hard enough, if you fast hard enough, if you talk in tongues 3 hours every day, if you read this verse and spin around on one foot and holler Jesus, you're going to kill your Jacob. But the Bible tells us that even when the old man was dying, Jacob and Israel were both sitting in the bed together. The Bible said Jacob began to die, and the Bible said Israel sat up and strengthened himself. Y'all aren't going to talk to me. And sometimes Jacob and Israel get into a fight living in the same body. Sometimes Jacob wants to quit and Israel wants to stay. Sometimes Israel wants to live holy and Jacob wants to go to a strip club. Sometimes Israel wants to read the Bible and Jacob wants to watch porn. And you say, how could you be? You're supposed to be a Christian. Israel is, but Jacob, I still got to live with Jacob. And we're both living in the... Y'all can't take a real message. You can't handle the truth. We don't dance as much as you dance. We don't shout as much as you shout. We don't leap as high as you leap, because a good man is trying to get you over the road.
Listen to me carefully then. And here comes the bottom line. The male is designed by God to be the father of the human family.